It's a big, large dividend, but what they were doing is just, it's election year. So they're doing it because of election year. But next year, they'll be at the same old shenanigans again, and I believe in the next couple of years that we're gonna lose our permanent fund dividend.
Would you support paying it out?
Hmm?
Would you support a bill paying out the permanent fund?
I can't hear
Would you support a bill paying out the permanent fund?
you. No.
Okay, there was a state senator from Kenai Borough in '99 put out a proposed bill to pay out the permanent fund at that time.
No. You know why?
96,
And he was-
You know why?
96 it was too. wasn't it?
96.
You know why I wouldn't support it? Because they won't pay you but pennies on the dollar. They'll shaft you big time. They'll give you a $25,000 check. Bert Stedman let the cat out of the hat 2 years ago and said that our permanent fund dividend's gonna be worth $30,000 apiece. And it's growing. And they're not gonna give you, which is the real value. It's better just to go the long run. You go 30, 40, 50, pass it on to the children and let them inherit. Because it's getting harder and harder for us in the state of Alaska to survive. Price of fuel, price of groceries, price of everything's up. We're being overtaxed. There's just tax on everything. I think what I'd like to do is go through the whole tax system and revoke some of these taxes that have been put on the people, special on small businesses and what have you. I'd like to see that change.
What kind of taxes?
Mhm.
Taxes at the state level?
Taxes on everything.
I'm just wondering what.
We're taxed to the hilt. I mean, and they do penny by penny, by nickel by nickel.
I know there's.
But you mean as far as a state tax?
Yeah, what taxes is the state levied on us besides the state excises of alcohol or fuel, you know, that state excise tax, what other taxes are there, is there?
Well, they're just about everything. I mean, it's everywhere. That's why I like.
I know there's lots of taxes,
I like
like
to-
70% overall, but, you know.
I'd like to be
between
able
federal and
to
state.
dig into it and find out exactly, you know, what's being taxed and what we can do to get rid of some of it. Because the hardship is getting too much for us. There's people moving out of the state of Alaska. If we lose our population base, we're in trouble. This is the only thing that's holding together is our population base, the businesses, small businesses that are running in the state at this point in time. Our children can't be leaving the state of Alaska. They need to stay here. But there's lots of stuff here that they can't do. They just leave. There's no work. The villages suffer big time. The village of Cake, there's no work over there. They go to Juneau, they go to different places because there's no work. No logging, no sawmills. You know, we need to harvest timber in the state of Alaska. We need to pump oil out of the ground. If you want to have a battery car, electric car, then so be it. Have one, but don't force everyone to have one. See,
Like California's doing.
what you got to do is you got to diversify. And our grid system can't handle a full electric system. Right now, Ketchikan, Petersburg, Wrangell got Tyee at its limit right now. We're right up against the grid. And if we were to add all electric to that, it would go past the grid mark. Anchorage is suffering up there. California's suffering big time.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to go all electric. Houston down in California says, I want to go electric. His grid system would blow up. It could not handle it.
You know, one big blackout.
And one big blackout. So some of these things that people decide to think of doing is crazy.
I got it. Thank you.
You take care.
You mentioned that having a constitutional convention might help to secure the permanent fund for long term, codify the permanent fund better than it has been. What makes you think that the opposite will happen in this political atmosphere?
Say it again, I didn't get the first one.
The constitutional convention, you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
for a constitutional convention, and you mentioned that one of the reasons for doing that would be to codify more precisely the preservation of the permanent fund.
Yes.
What makes you think the opposite won't happen in this political climate?
Because of what they're gonna do is they're going to elect delegates. And the delegates are gonna come from the people. So each community is gonna have a chance to vote in their own delegates. They're the ones that are gonna be making the decisions, they're not gonna be the government. So when we get all the delegates of the state of Alaska, just like what I was speaking about when I was in Anchorage, all the delegates were there, that's who's gonna be representing the state. And so what they'll do, I'm believing what they'll do is they'll come together and they'll ratify a law stating that the permanent fund that cannot be touched, that the statute, the way it's been put together and formulated for over 40 years, has been working, is fine. I think that's a step that we have to go. If we can't do it through the House and can't do it through the judicial system, then the people are gonna have the final vote on it. It's just like the statute is now. They cannot change a permanent fund without the vote of the people. Well, remember they tried that in '80 and over 70% of the people said, don't touch our permanent fund dividend, right? Well, you notice they didn't go that route again because they knew what the answer would be, see? And so that's what we have to do. If we can't do it in the House and the Senate to the governor, then the people are gonna have to step in.
I'm worried that the people, that the delegates that will be chosen will be city council type people. And, I have no faith in whatsoever in what they're gonna do.
People
I
gravitate towards that type of position, just because they get fat heads or whatever, and
They
they just.
won't be Liberty people.
We
I
saw
just
it,
don't-
you saw it in the convention, the delegates at the conventions, yeah, there's, in certain times, that you get a handful that show up for Liberty people, but the overall majority just seems to, will just gravitate to power, and it just seems like it's the status quo type of thing, it doesn't matter what party it is either.
I just wouldn't have a lot of confidence in the outcome of that. It's like a national constitutional convention, a convention of the states. There's a lot of talk about that right now, and that we could improve the Constitution. We could solidify the parts of the Constitution that need solidifying to make liberty better. Well, the whole thing has been ignored completely. So what makes anybody think that new and improved version of it is going to be anything other than ignored? Anyway,
Well, it's gonna be a seal and deal move. It's gonna be in concrete. We can't touch a permanent fund dividend, but we need the people to get in there to make the right decisions. We're really up against it, regardless of where we turn and how we turn, up or down, left or right. We're really against it.
We do have to do something.
But we do have to do something.
It has to be grassroots, like you said too. I left North Idaho last year because people come in, like you said, if you wanna have an electric car, that's fine, but don't force me to have one, see? So that's the Democrats' way, is to, you have to like what I like, or you're wrong, see? So they come in, they join the city council there, and they bring the city government, and then the county government, and then it goes to the state level. So if people don't get out and vote for your county government, your city government, then like you said, we're up against it, and then nothing. I mean, you gotta get out and vote. You have to change it at the local level before it can change anywhere else, So, obviously that's why we're here, because we want it to change at the state level, so then it can maybe go to the federal level, I personally don't believe anything will change unless there's term limits, because these people are in there for careers. They're not in there for the people, they're in there, like you said, for money. They're in there for a career, because you can make millions being a senator or a congressman,
I'll give you an example what happened in Petersburg. When we had this COVID deal with the masks and everything, the city council voted that all the stores had to police everyone that come into their store, and they had to wear a mask. And so the manager of Hammer Weekon, which has been there for a very, very, very long time, got together 25 other businesses in Petersburg, and they went to the council and they gave them a notice. If you go ahead and enact this council law that everyone has to wear a mask in our stores, we're gonna shut Petersburg down. We're gonna shut all the hardware stores down, the grocery stores, the fuel company, everything. We're gonna just shut her
The
down.
owners of all these businesses,
Huh?
all the owners of the businesses did that.
26 of them.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so immediately, with a snap of the finger, they ripped up and shredded that, and that was the end of it. Okay, so now what they did is they exposed themselves. Okay? So the next time around, we just had an election. The two people that were against all us were voted out, and two new people came in there that are patriots, are gonna fight for Petersburg. So there was a precedence that that's what we're doing, see? See, we're the grassroots movement that's gonna move in and make the change. If we sit in our home in our living rooms and watch TV and be complacent and don't do anything, they're gonna eat us alive. But if we stand up, it don't take many. You'd be surprised how much power is in this room right here. You'd really be surprised how much power is in this room. I sat in board meetings, in Fish and Game board meetings, where just me and Craig Norheim were there, and we were making policies for the whole state. Because we were their voice. That council was sitting there and listening to us, and we were telling them what we wanted, and that's what they would do. See? And so we have such power right here in this room that can turn thousands of people the other direction by our voice. And that's what we need to do, and that's a very good point you have over there. Not everyone is gonna want electric cars. They're gonna stick with their gas rig. Some people will have a Honda and some will not, and have a bigger rig. And they'll use the bigger rig for certain jobs, and they'll take the Honda out for grocery shopping, right? You know, you're diversifying, you're working, you're thinking, you're doing, but we don't need government telling us what to do, you know? Mike, you gotta do this because I said so. And I said, wait a minute, I'm the one that elected you in office, you listen to me. Eh? And when I get elected into office, I listen to you. You're the people. Listen to what you all have to say. You know, and if I don't know everything that you're asking me, I'll learn and find out about it. Because see, I'm on the outside of the Capitol building right now. But you get me inside that Capitol building and get me on that Senate floor, there's gonna be a lot that they're gonna hear that they're not gonna wanna hear. Because I'll be standing up for you people. But that's why Stedman has so much power. He's been sitting on a finance committee for years. And he's second seat on the finance committee. And just about everything he says goes. And he's very cocky. He's very against the people. And he's a very proud person. And we need to knock him off this pedestal and put someone there that's going to be a term limiter. I'll go 2 years, two sessions, may even go one if someone could come in behind me and take my place. That's good. I was on a native board in Petersburg, and we get federal grants from the federal government. And when I stepped in there, we were in bad shape. The government was about ready to come in there and do an audit and shut the whole tribe down. So I went into one of the meetings, someone told me I went into one of the meetings and I raised Cain and I said, hey, you guys that are messing this place up here, you're just about ready it's just about ready to fold. And so I got in as a board member, and the people that were running the administration, most of them had left and quit and were fired. And so we got all our grants back up again, back up to snuff. Everything was in perfect order. We had a grant auditor, we had an auditor come in and audit our books, and she says, these books are one of the finest audits we've done in a long time throughout Southeast Alaska. You guys have really done a fantastic job. Well, after the first term and a half, I said to the board, I says, I'm leaving now. I'm not here to be planted here forever, I'm leaving. But I want you to make me a promise. And he asked, well, what would that be? And the promise I asked him to do is, would you please keep this company, this corporation in the black, and would you run things properly? And they said that they would. And then I went ahead and I retired from there. 6 years. And that's what I'll do as a state senator. After I've been in Juneau, I've done what I've needed to do, I'm gonna bow out. But it's gonna be a mess when I get in there. It's not gonna be easy, but I'm willing to sacrifice and go forth and do what I can.
What I think is kind of interesting, what you bring up, is at the local level that you were finding in Idaho that people would come in and take over the council, and then pretty soon the planning commission and.
Well, because the people, the locals live there, work every day for a living, so.
And you're not
we
paying
don't have the
attention,
time.
right?
We
Right.
don't have the time to go there and just, that's what we do, you know, because, I mean, I hate to use the example of Californians, but they sell their house for $4 million in California, come up to North Idaho, buy a mansion for $800,000, and now they got $3 million in the bank and nothing but time on their hands. So I guess I'm gonna go join the city council, and then I'm gonna bring my politics with me and force my politics down the throat. My kids can't buy a house in North Idaho right now. There's no way. The market has gone so bad. I mean, we got lucky. We hit the market. We bought when just before it went, and we sold when it got hot, so we were able to buy out right up here. Well, now I got a little more time on my hands, so I can go to my community council meetings, and I not even run for community council.
I think that's what's necessary because
That's where it has to change. I've seen it. It ruined my hometown. I lived in a small hometown in North Idaho. Ruined it. I call it California North now.
well, I think you're gonna see the same sorts of things happening here in southeast Alaska. You can kind of see it happening here in Craig and Klawock and with the Port St. Nick, people coming in with lots of money. And when they come in with lots of money, luckily we don't have property tax here except for in Craig, but it will push people out that can't afford to pay for that stuff, and the people that come in have a whole different value system. So I don't know how you can sort of stop that from happening, because it seems like it's been happening all through time. The farmers get pushed out, the small fishermen get pushed out, everybody gets pushed out because the big corporations come in. So what can we do? We go to the budget meetings, we go to the planning commission, but we're all working.
If you can.
But it's almost like you have to go to some really boring sounding meetings in order to kind of figure out what's going on. Like you were saying, you were in the corporate, the tribal corporate world trying to figure out what's going on, and who really wants to spend time sitting at meetings?
It's like until they expose themselves. They have to expose themselves before the people actually see what's going on. If you're not in the council meetings and
You don't know.
what's going on, you don't know. I don't know what goes on in the council meetings down there until it hits you, and then by that time it's generally too late.
So I guess that's kind of one of the things that we have to do as people,
As the people.
as to sort of get involved into those sorts of meetings that sound really boring, like budget meetings, to find out what people are doing.
It starts with your own community, and it works its way up. And if you don't have a voice in there, just like I said, when I was in a fishing game and a couple guys were in there making laws for the whole state. And that's what you need to do. Well, guess what? The left, they do that quite often. The Democrats, they come in and they make the laws for the whole state. You know why? Because the Republicans stay home and don't come to these meetings.
Right.
They wanna watch baseball, or they wanna do this or do that, but they don't wanna go out. It really makes me feel good to see this amount of people here tonight, concerned citizens for their state, for their economy, for their children, for their grandchildren, because you have a very powerful voice, and this is why I'm stepping forward, because I think that I have a powerful voice. I mean, District A used to be District R, but now they redistricted the whole area. It's District A is a powerful voice for the state of Alaska. It goes from Ketchikan clear up the Yakutat now. So there's 20 of us that are gonna be in the Senate. I am a powerful voice as one. And if I got my friend in there, Stephen Wright is two, and I've got others in there that I'm gonna call in too for We the People, we're gonna have a majority of a minority. We're gonna have a voice. And we need that. Now the House has got 40 members, and it's a little bit more difficult because there's more people, right? They need more. I'm fully against the caucus. Anyone heard of the caucus? Yeah, it's called a binding caucus. And what they do is they make you swear to vote the way that they want you to vote.
What if you don't?
Well, it's for a platform.
What if you don't? How can they make you?
You end up in a closet somewhere, and
Censors.
they try to make your life difficult. But guess what? I came from a closet, so I'll be right at home with the mops. But when I'm on that Senate floor, I've got power. I don't care if I come out of the closet or I come from spiderweb area, whatever they put me in. I'm gonna have power because I'm gonna have you people behind me, and that's gonna, and they fear that. They fear that person that's coming out of that closet. Now the ones that have got these high positions, they got it because they put themselves in that position and they signed the binding caucus contract, stating that they're gonna listen to what they say and how to vote and so forth and so on. And I will not be in favor of that. I will not stand for it. And, so,
So you see David Eastman, you know, I'm familiar with David Eastman, and he's
yes.
been a great person, and they're really piling on to him right now. Who do you see within the Senate that you would actually feel would be sort of the same sort of thinking that you'd have?
I've got to get in there, and I've got to meet with these people, and I've got to talk to them like I just talked to you. And I got to let them know that we are a grassroots movement, and that we're fighting for our lives, and we're fighting for our children and grandchildren, and we're not one that's going to stand by and be complacent, and we're not one that's going to stand by and not be heard. And we're going to voice our opinion. It's going to be strong. It's going to be active, and they're going to listen, and they're going to realize that what they've done in the past and how they voted in the past has just not been right. Because, you know, conviction sets in on everyone. I mean, you can look back at your life and see the track that you rode, right? And you say, geez, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Well, that's what happens with them when they vote on bills like SB 26 or the crime bill, SB 91, when they let criminals out the day after they get arrested.
Yeah, no,
I talked to the
no bail or nothing.
the police officers there in Klawock. I went right to the station and I talked to him. I says, what do you think, SB 91? Do you think that's a good bill? He says, it's a terrible bill, he says. We just get done doing all the paperwork, we send them on off to Ketchikan, and the next day they're back here again. And it says, we're letting them go now. We're not even arresting them because it's a very sad situation that's going on. That's another bill that I'm gonna stand against and revoke, and we'll get back to the, you know, you pay the crime. You do the crime, you pay for it. You know, and that's something else that we need. We need to protect our family. We need to protect our homes and the hardworking people that work hard for things. And the next day they go out and they find that it's been stolen. And then the person that stole it got away. So, yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle. And they've sure let a lot of things slide for the state of Alaska for what's wrong instead of what's right. And the ones that are fighting for what's right are getting themselves in trouble. You know, they're putting them in the closet and they're not giving them positions and this, that, and then they're ridiculing and they're blaming them and they're telling them all their faults, and then they're not talking about their own faults, you know. And I had one guy up there in Fairbanks when I was running for governor, and we had the President Trump's stand there, you know, and a Democrat came in there and he just chewed the cremolas out of us. We were just sitting there, you know, we're doing our thing and chewing cremolas out of us. And I stood up right in his face and I looked right at him and I says, I did not see you walk on water when you came in here. I says, have you ever looked in the mirror and listened to yourself the way you're talking right now? You're screaming and hollering, saying what terrible things that this man is, our president. Here our president gave us a 1.5% economy. What does they call that? When the economy is at inflation? Is that what it is?
The inflation rate?
Yeah, 1.5% when he's president. Right now, our Biden, the president right now, is at 9%. And that number's skewed, believe me. There's places up in Alaska that are over 40 and 50% inflation. They're getting killed up there. The fuel prices and what have you, so forth and so on, is astronomical. And our president had made it so that we would not have to worry about foreign oil.
Yeah.
We had our own oil.
Yeah.
We had the Keystone Pipeline. We had Anwar ready to roll up here. There were
North
so
Dakota
many.
had all kinds of oil.
We have more oil in
Yeah.
the state of Alaska that lasts us for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds
Yeah.
of years.
That brings up the question I have.
Yeah.
And that is, who was the governor that in 93, 94, who was our governor? He had a lawsuit.
Is that Sheffield?
Before Knowles, right? Right
Before Knowles, just before Knowles.
Sheffield?
No, he was one of the people that put together the PFD.
Oh, Governor Hammond.
No, it was after. It wasn't Hammond, was it? Was he governor in 92?
No, Hammond was early.
No, that was way earlier.
Pickle.
Pickle.
Pickle,
Hickle,
Yeah.
yes.
Pickle.
Hickle's the one that, when we became a state, he's the one that
Yes,
signed
yes,
it
yes,
in
yes.
1959.
All right, so he was going after the feds on the royalties in this, the state's part and the feds part. And he was going ahead, full steam ahead on that lawsuit.
The statehood compact?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so now, this, instead of getting 40% of the revenue, the state gets 10%, right? Is that what it is? And then Knowles, a cousin to Bill Clinton, I think, dropped that lawsuit. I think that should come back. I think that the particulars of the statehood compact should be enforced. And where would you stand on that? Because this is a revenue issue as well. Listen, besides a liberty issue, it's a revenue issue. And the revenue is, that's been the whole thing about, you know, in the state's big thing about going after the PFD was revenue to run the state, because we're gonna go bankrupt and we can't give you people all your free stuff. But there's free stuff that they're actually doing, and we are probably.
It's one thing I really dislike when they say that our permanent fund dividend is free. It's not free.
No.
It's
but-
part of our royalties that are given to us
Yeah,
by the government because we lost our subsurface rights. The owners of the land lost their subsurface rights, so Governor Hammond had this great idea, well then if you lost your subsurface rights, why don't we give you a royalty of the permanent fund of oil coming out of the ground? And it was a great idea. And we only get a very, very, very small percentage. The state gets the other 90+%. I mean, they're making money hand over
the
fist.
state or the feds?
The state and the
Oh,
feds.
yeah.
But I mean, they're getting,
Right.
and another thing that really gripes me is the state only owns 40% of the land of Alaska. And the government owns 60%. Governor Walker, before he retired from his governorship and should never even became governor because he's a liar, but he gave away millions and millions of acres of our land to the federal government. And it should have been the other way around. We should every state in the union should at least own 51% of the value of their own land. We should be able to have a right to say what we need to say about oil and precious metals that come out of our ground. We should have royalties coming to the people from gold and silver and what have you.
Yeah, you were saying.
And timber.
I agree, it's resources, it's property of the commons is what it is.
Yeah.
Every tree that's taken off the ground, you know, everybody should get a few pennies. I mean, I agree with that concept. Because otherwise, right now, special interest is what gets it.
That's what was happening. That's why they got lobbyists. They're so powerful that, you know, they bow down to them. And just like our roads out here, you know, they burr them off and they don't allow the hunters to go back in there. And they don't allow them to go in and cut firewood and this, that, and everything else. That's just a bunch of baloney. This is our land. It's not government's land. If we want to go back and cut trees and do what we need to do, then just leave the roads alone. Those logging roads are part of this act that what do they call the act? Roadless Act.
Yeah.
That's something that should have never happened. I mean, these roads are our roads. They're Alaskans' roads. We have a right to go hunt on them. We have a right to go get our firewood on them. We should not have any restrictions when it comes to us being able to survive in our own state. Our state is the largest state in the union, and the government, what do they try to do? They handcuff you and they lock you up and say you can't do this and you can't do that.
That really brings up an important question. You know, I met a congresswoman from Washington, and I got to know her a little bit, and she was a former congresswoman, and what she said that the most difficult thing when she got into Congress was to realize she had all these ideas that she was gonna try to put forth, but she found out that the only way you're gonna have any success in doing those is by keeping everyone whole. You gotta keep everyone whole. Everybody votes with their pocketbook. And if you hurt their pocketbook, they're not gonna vote for you. I mean, you might think they will out of principle, but in general, she says they won't. Now that's gonna be as far as I can see, your biggest problem, because Alaskans receive a tremendous amount of money from the federal government. And if you want state sovereignty, you have to be willing to thumb your nose at all that money from the federal government. And as a congressperson, if you do that, you're gonna suffer, because people, they vote with their pocketbooks, and it's a major dilemma.
25% of the voters in Alaska have got state jobs, the government.
Or federal.
75% of the people are either Democrats, Republicans, nonpartisans, independent, what have you. If those people would get up and vote, we could just trump these state workers and the Democrats. Now, there are gonna be some Democrats gonna be voting for me. And the reason why they're gonna vote is because they're tired of what they're going through, because they're going through the same thing we're going through. They're having to pay the same prices at the pump. Just because a Democrat walks in the store and says, I'm a Democrat, well, then you get 25% off. That doesn't happen. You have to pay the same price. They're getting tired of it, see? And they're gonna come in and say, you know, Stedman's been in there for 19 years, and what has he done? I like to see a list of what he's done. Biden has been in there for 1 year. What's the list that he's done to help the people?
He's red-pilled people more than Trump probably has. People are opening their eyes now.
That's what I think too, that it's just, it's gone so far that, you know, I told a friend the other day, I said, if you don't get out and vote, I don't wanna hear you bitch about the outcome. I don't wanna hear it.
Yeah.
If you didn't get out, he said, what's my one vote do? I said, your one vote with my one vote, and his one vote, and everybody that says, what's my one vote do? They add up, like you said.
We
There's
gotta
75%
swamp
of people.
the system where their cheating will overcome, if we could overcome their cheating, if we go out and vote on election day.
Right, exactly.
What's one of the
Otherwise-
biggest
otherwise,
wasteful spending
complain
that the
about it.
state
Yeah.
does? How would you rank some of the biggest, worst spending things that the state does?
Government,
Government, yeah.
the whole.
But the government's for the people though, ain't it?
The government is one of the biggest wasteful entities that the state has. And we could see it by their passing of the budget this last year, the largest budget in history. What I would like to do is, like I said earlier, is have a forensic audit done.
Yeah.
But I want that audit to be complete. I wanna know where every penny went, not every dollar, not every $10, every penny. The forensic auditor, when he was auditing last year, they found discrepancies in the audit. They found that they were transferring money from one account to another, millions of dollars, and they were not constitutionally allowed to do so. It was against the law what they've done. Stedman and them got panicked. They freaked out, and they stopped them, cut them off, sent them down the road. The same thing with Dunleavy, when he hired the lady to do the finances. I can't remember her name. Does anyone recall her name?
I don't remember her name, but she was for the PFD?
She was she was there to expose what was going on in the books, the financial books. And so she was in there digging and talking, and Dunleavy fired her because it was getting too personal for himself. See, this is what's going on. They're hiding a lot of things. We don't all know what's going on behind those closed doors because they don't tell us. Okay? And with a forensic audit, though, they come in there and they will do a complete audit, and they will look into everything that they have spent. And I'd like to see that audit. And then I'd like to show it to the public. And then once that's shown to the public, I'm sure there's gonna be heads that are gonna be rolling. They're gonna be going to jail over it.
What about the public education system? I see a lot of waste with the schools that are all over. I mean, in the villages, one of the biggest places you find are the schools. And you have the school teachers, and I would say a lot of the product that's coming out of the schools is not real good. So,
We spend billions of dollars in our universities and our K through 12. Our university, U of A in Anchorage, do you know what the graduation rate is there? Anyone have any idea? 8%.
8?
Only 8% of the people graduate from the U of A.
Wow.
But we give them $1.2 to $1.5 billion a year to operate. See, now the U of A, they've got thousands upon thousands of acres of land that they could utilize and they could sell to create their own finances for the U of A. If you were to say to the U of A, you're cut off, you're not getting another dollar from the state of Alaska, but you have to go ahead and create your own finances by whatever, however means you do it, guess what they'll do? All of a sudden, that graduation rate will go up, you know why? Because they need revenue, right? All of a sudden, you see that 8% climb clear up to where it should be. See, but since you're getting free money, they're just using
Was that,
the state.
is it because it's part of the Constitution, the state Constitution, that we have to, the state has to provide isn't the university part of the Constitution?
It's part of the Constitution, but that could be changed. I look at it this way: if you're not performing at your 100%, then why are we even spending? Why are the taxpayers or whatever? Why are we even allowing this to happen? K through 12 or education for K through 12 is one of the lowest in the nation. Did you guys realize that?
And probably
It's
the
way down there.
highest per capita was spending on the child. So how do you fight that? That's a big union, you know?
Yeah, and how do you sell the idea that we need to give less for education, which I'm all for, give a lot less for education.
Because then you hate the
If they're
kids.
doing a bad job of it,
It's a
you
big
cut them off
battle.
at the knees as far as I'm concerned, but try to sell that. Good luck.
It's a big battle, and it's something that needs to be exposed. Just like the city council, you're trying to pull the mask thing, you know. Just like the oil companies, who in the world, when they start a business, get their company paid for in advance, and then they go ahead and they drill, and they got all this money that the state gives to them, billions of dollars, right? I say, let's go find some small companies. If Exxon and all them don't want to do these guys are multi-trillionaires, okay? But they make the state look like we're bad guys. So we have to give them incentives of billions of dollars to drill oil up there and look for oil. And I think that's totally wrong. That's why Sarah Palin, when she tried to change that, they came against her. The lobbyists and the big oil companies came against her, and they sued the Cremolas out of her, and the state wouldn't stand behind her. And so she quit. She had no choice but to leave, and I don't blame her, you know, for what she went through. But you're right. It's like spitting in the wind, you know. It's going to come back and hit you in the face.
Try to sell it.
But we've got to go out there and try.
Take off, man. Good luck, buddy.
Okay.
I'll be voting for you.
Oh, thank you very much.
And let's go Brandon sticker.
Okay, thank you. Let's go, Brandon. But it's gonna be an uphill battle, and it's gonna be absolutely tough, because I'm gonna be going up against it. Many of us will be going up against the system.
Well, I think you're fighting for the permanent fund will hopefully counterbalance some of the trying to cut the budgets, you know, in the state spending. You know, hopefully they'll offset one of them, because people are gonna hopefully gravitate toward your saving permanent fund for them.
Well,
I'm
it's
hoping it'll counteract it.
it's like I'm a little Governor Hammond. You know, I'm just part of him, and I'm trying to keep what he put into place and keep it sustainable, and keep it for the long run, for generations to come. I'm not really thinking so much of myself. I'm thinking about the generations to come. And I think that Governor Hammond was a fine governor, you know, and he was just a bearded governor, and they came to him one day and they says, "We'd like you to become governor of Alaska." And he says, why would they ever vote for a guy like me? He says, I got a beard and I'm all scrungy looking, and I wouldn't be a good governor. But he says, "I'll tell you what I'll do." He says, "If you could